Hello and welcome to A News. My name is Atim Tongana, coming to you live from Baku in Azerbaijan. Here are the headlines. Rescuers race to find survivors after Colombia's devastating earthquake, with around 3,000 people reportedly missing. Tehran has called on Washington to release its frozen assets as a condition for reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And Zelenskyy says Ukraine has submitted a peace proposal to U.S. negotiators as Washington pushes to revive talks with Russia. We begin this evening in Colombia, where rescue teams are still searching for survivors after one of the deadliest earthquakes in its recent history. The quake has caused widespread damage in some of the poorest regions in the country, leaving thousands homeless.
At least 250 people have been killed and more than 1,600 people injured after a 7.5 magnitude earthquake hit western Colombia on Monday morning. Rescue operations continue to try and find people trapped under the rubble. The worst damage has been reported in Cali and Pereira. Crews are breaking up large concrete slabs and forming human chains to remove debris from the site. The area is repeatedly brought to complete silence so rescuers can listen for signs of life. They say faint sounds can still be heard even after 30 hours after the quake struck. Homes, schools and health centers have been destroyed or badly damaged. Many communities in the Choco region are still without electricity and other basic services. The earthquake struck just a few days after President Abelardo de la Espriella took office. He has visited the affected areas and promised support for families who lost their homes. Work is underway to restore electricity in Cali. Some rural areas are still without power and several traffic lights remain out of service. A nighttime curfew has been imposed in the city. Officials say troops will remain in the worst hit areas to help maintain order. Authorities say it may take several days to determine the full extent of the damage and the final death toll.
Now, the rescue effort in Colombia has turned into an international response, with neighboring countries sending help and the EU pledging millions in emergency aid. But in the hardest hit areas, rescuers are still searching for survivors beneath the rubble.
Peru has sent 12 tons of humanitarian aid to Colombia as rescue crews continue searching for people trapped beneath buildings destroyed by the country's strongest earthquake this century. The 7.4 magnitude quake struck western Colombia early Monday, tearing through the coffee-growing heartland and leaving homes, schools and health facilities damaged or destroyed. Peru is also coordinating the deployment of trained rescuers, while Venezuela has announced it will send humanitarian aid and rescue teams. The European Union has pledged €2 million to support communities in the worst-hit areas. The United Nations says it stands ready to provide further assistance if Colombia requests it. UN figures show nearly 5,000 homes have been damaged and 387 destroyed. 61 buildings have collapsed, while more than 550 educational institutions and 24 health facilities have been affected. The World Health Organization says damage has been reported at health facilities across 6 departments, with Valle del Cauca and particularly Cali among the hardest hit. Rescuers are using cranes, excavators and their bare hands to search through the rubble. In Cali, crowds cheered after a woman was pulled alive from a collapsed apartment complex. But some communities close to the epicenter remain without power, water and gas, while others say they lack basic medical supplies. With the death toll still being assessed and rescue operations continuing, international aid is now reaching Colombia as the search for survivors goes on.
Tensions around Iran's maritime blockade are escalating, with Washington reporting a fresh strike on a commercial vessel. Meanwhile, Tehran says the key regional waterway will stay closed until its demands are met.
US forces have fired missiles at a commercial cargo ship they say repeatedly ignored warnings to stop violating the naval blockade on Iranian ports. The Panama-flagged Vela Nova was struck by 2 Hellfire missiles fired from a US Navy helicopter, according to US Central Command. The missiles disabled the ship's steering gear. The vessel was believed to have been hit about 71 nautical miles off Pakistan's coast, according to UK maritime risk management group Vanguard. CENTCOM says it has now redirected 55 commercial vessels attempting to run the blockade, disabled 3 non-compliant ships and boarded 2 others. If confirmed, the Vela Nova would be the 12th vessel attacked by US forces since the blockade was announced in April, and the 3rd since it was reimposed on the 14th of July. Iranian security official Mohsen Rezaei said the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed unless Washington changes its behavior and accepts Iran's conditions. Those include ending what Tehran calls the US war against Iran and unfreezing Iranian assets. Iran's foreign ministry has also said reopening the strait depends on lifting the US naval blockade. It says talks with Oman are focused on shipping routes but are separate from the question of reopening the strait. And Tehran says it is not holding direct negotiations with Washington, with diplomacy limited to messages passed through intermediaries.
To the conflict in Iran now, Tehran has stressed that to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the US must release its frozen assets and bring an end to fighting across the Middle East, with Iranian governments blaming Washington for insecurity in the region. A News correspondent Taraj Shirululur reports from Tehran.
The newly appointed Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Mohsen Rezaei, emphasized that the Strait of Hormuz will not reopen until the U.S. changes its behavior and accepts Iran's conditions, saying that the U.S. must end the war and release Iran's frozen funds. Mohsen Rezaei made the statement in a meeting with the Chinese ambassador in Tehran, Zhong Pyo, during which he welcomed the constructive and stable relations between Tehran and Beijing. According to one news agency quoting official sources, Rezaei blamed the U.S. for insecurity in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman, adding that Washington had put the entire region at risk by imposing a war on Iran. Saying that Iran's conditions have been conveyed to the U.S. side by intermediaries, he stressed that the Strait of Hormuz would remain closed until the United States changes its conduct and accepts Iran's conditions. Rezaei also said that any agreement between Iran and Oman on transit routes through the strategic waterway would be a separate matter from the closure of the strait. The meeting was held amid reports that U.S. military targeted a vessel at the Strait of Hormuz, fading hopes of a deal over the strait and hitting the prospects of an Iran-U.S. talks with a new impasse. On Iran's bilateral ties with China, he praised the strategic partnership between Tehran and Beijing, as well as their membership in major international frameworks, including the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS. Rezaei welcomed China's position regarding the anti-Iran draft resolutions at the UN Security Council during recent Israeli-US war against Iran. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting from Tehran for A News.
Now staying with the Iran-US conflict, Qatar says Iran-Oman talks on Hormuz are progressing. Now for a discussion on this story, I'm joined by Ali Hussein Guluzada, an expert on things South Caucasus and Iran. Hello and welcome to A News.
Greetings, my pleasure.
So in a recent statement, Qatar says any future arrangements for Hormuz must be based on a regional consensus. Is Doha signaling that the Gulf states want a more formal role in shaping security around the strait rather than leaving these dynamics to the US and Iran?
Qatar is clearly sending that signal. In a recent statement, Qatari FM spokesman Majid Al-Ansari has stressed that any future arrangements on the management of Hormuz, including possible fees or operational regimes, must be based on full regional consensus and respect for international law. However, the realism of this demand collides with Iran's position. For Tehran, influence over Hormuz isn't merely a bargaining chip. It's a matter of strategical survival and national security. Iran regards the Strait as falling within in its sphere of influence, and it's unlikely to voluntarily accept a formula in which the Arab monarchies hold decisive weight. Instead, Tehran will most probably try to consolidate and even expand its de facto presence, treating the current crisis as a precedent. So while Qatar's signal is important as a declaration of Gulf state intent, it remains asymmetrical for now. Doha and its partners want a formal role, I think, while Iran seeks maximum autonomy.
All right, so if Gulf states are calling for regional understandings on Hormuz, where does that leave external powers such as the U.S. then, which has traditionally played a main role in playing that actor in the Strait?
The United States remains de facto present in the region and in Hormuz, and retains significant military capabilities around Hormuz. A complete American withdrawal from the equation is highly unlikely in the near term. Nevertheless, the logic of regional consensus creates space for a partial redistribution of roles. Washington could accept the degree of compromise, especially if Oman, a country that maintains working relations with Iran while remaining a strategic partner of the United States, takes a central mediatory and operational role. In such a format, the American presence could shift from primary guarantor to external balancer, or guarantor of last resort. This would reduce direct United States responsibility for day-to-day management of the Strait while preserving strategic access. For the Gulf states, this is advantageous: less dependence on fluctuations in American policy and greater agency. For the United States, it's offer a way to share risks and costs without fully relinquishing influence.
All right, so Qatar links the freedom of the navigation of the Strait to international law. Now, I want us to go back and stay on the role of the Gulf states then. Is this international law stance by Qatar simply a legal argument, or is Doha trying to establish principles that could actually govern future arrangements in the Gulf?
It's primarily an attempt to establish principles. The reference to international law isn't just rhetoric, because Qatar and the other Gulf states understand that any serious new conflict or prolonged uncertainty around Hormuz hits their economies. Insurance premiums, investment climate, and international standing directly. They have already suffered tangible losses over the past months. Doha is therefore trying to lock in rules that prevent the Strait from being turned into an instrument of political blackmail. Iran, however, has a ready counter-argument. Before the crisis, the Strait functioned relatively freely, and the current situation is the result of the war that, in Tehran's view, was initiated by the United States and its allies. Iran will insist that the old rules no longer apply and that it's entitled to a special regime. As a result, the probability of a full return to the pre-crisis status in Hormuz is low. We are more likely to see a hybrid arrangement in which freedom of navigation is restored, but with elements of coordination that Iran will try to exploit for self-assertion.
Mr. Gulizada, thank you so much for your time on A News.
Thank you very much.
Now, President Trump has confirmed that he secretly swapped planes as he left a NATO summit in Turkey last month, citing a possible security threat. The revelation comes after reports that Trump boarded Air Force One on the 8th of July in full view of television cameras before being moved into a catering truck to a military aircraft. Air Force One was then used as a decoy carrying the White House press and senior aides across Europe, all reportedly unaware that the president was no longer on board. Addressing the operation for the first time on Tuesday evening, Trump said that he was simply following the advice of the Secret Service and the military.
Well, it's only up to Secret Service. I just follow what they'd like to do. So I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say. I have a lot of threats. I have a lot of threats that you don't know about. Any consequential president has a lot of threats. Non-consequential presidents don't get threats. And I think that I'm maybe the most consequential president.
Turkish President Recep Erdogan is due to meet Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ankara on Wednesday. Abbas arrived in the Turkish capital for a three-day official visit at Erdogan's invitation. According to Turkey's communications director, the two leaders are expected to discuss the latest developments in Palestine, bilateral relations and regional issues. After the break, we'll look at peace efforts from Ukraine, which says it has submitted proposals to the United States aimed at ending its war with Russia. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Ukraine says it has submitted proposals to the United States aimed at ending the war with Russia as Washington steps up efforts to revive peace talks. President Zelenskyy says Kyiv is ready to negotiate, but is calling for stronger U.S. support and greater pressure on Moscow.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said on Tuesday that Kyiv had submitted proposals to U.S. negotiators as Washington works to revive efforts to end the war with Russia, now in its fifth year. In his evening address, Zelenskyy said Ukraine had shared its proposals with the American side, while calling for stronger U.S. support for Ukraine's air defenses and greater pressure on Russia to bring the war to an end.
There was a briefing by the negotiating team. We have conveyed our proposals to the American side, and the United States can help strengthen our defense, first and foremost with air defense, and put pressure on Russia so that its plans are different, to prepare for an end to the war rather than prolonging it.
Zelenskyy did not disclose any details of the proposals. The statement comes as Washington continues its efforts to restart negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow, with U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner expected to engage with both sides. Ukraine has repeatedly said it is ready for negotiations and an unconditional ceasefire, but insists any peace deal must include credible security guarantees. Zelenskyy spoke after accusing Russia of using North Korean-supplied ballistic missiles during an overnight attack on the southeastern city of Zaporizhia.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that Moscow will respond if European countries seize Russian merchant vessels. Speaking during military exercises on Sakhalin Island, Putin accused some countries of violating maritime law and called potential vessel seizures, open quote, piracy and robbery, close quote. He also accused NATO of expanding in the Asia-Pacific and warned of rising regional tensions. The remark comes as the EU steps up pressure on Russia's so-called shadow fleet. Now, Romania's military has destroyed 2 drones found drifting near the Neptune Deep gas project in the Black Sea. Ukraine has confirmed the drones did not belong to its own forces. A controlled blast was carried out after the UAVs were spotted by a civilian ship on Tuesday, but their origin remains unclear. The offshore Neptune Deep project is due to start production in 2027 and aims to make Romania EU's largest natural gas producer. Russia has begun importing petrol from India for the first time as Ukraine's strikes on Russian refineries disrupt domestic fuel supplies. Russian refineries processed about 1/3 less crude than usual in July, while further Ukrainian strikes have hit several facilities. Moscow has also banned petrol and diesel exports to protect domestic supplies. More shipments from India are expected. Meanwhile, Turkish authorities are investigating the latest in a series of mysterious drone discoveries along the country's Black Sea coast, amid growing concerns that the Russia-Ukraine war is spilling across the region. Adam Morrow reports from Istanbul.
Turkish authorities are examining an unidentified drone that washed ashore in the Black Sea province of Düzce, in the latest incident highlighting the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war on Turkey's northern coastline. The unmanned aerial vehicle was discovered in the coastal district of Akçakoca after beachgoers spotted a suspicious object floating close to the shoreline and alerted security forces. Turkish Navy underwater defense teams quickly secured the area before recovering the drone and taking it for technical examination. Officials say the investigation is focused on determining the drone's type, origin, and how it ended up in Turkish territorial waters. According to local media reports, the device resembles a Russian-made Garan 2 drone, which itself is derived from Iran's Shahed 136 loitering munition. This assessment, however, has not yet been confirmed by the Turkish authorities. Officials have also stressed that there is no ongoing threat to public safety in the affected area. The discovery marks the latest in a growing number of drones and other war-related objects found along Turkey's Black Sea coast since late last year. Several unmanned aircraft have previously been recovered or have even crashed in Turkish coastal provinces, including Samsun, Zonguldak, Bartın, Ordu, Artvin, and Kastamonu. Most, if not all, of these incidents are believed to be linked to military activity associated with the Russia-Ukraine war. The repeated discoveries have heightened concerns that the conflict is increasingly spilling beyond the immediate combat zone and posing risks to civilian areas and commercial shipping across the Black Sea. Since the war began in early 2022, Turkey has maintained relations with both Kiev and Moscow. But in recent weeks, Ankara has repeatedly urged the two warring parties to show restraint, warning against any actions that could threaten Black Sea security or freedom of navigation. Authorities say forensic analysis of the drone is continuing, with its exact origin expected to become clearer once technical examinations are completed. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Ukraine has reportedly suspended drone attacks on oil tankers using Russia's Black Sea port following a request from U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. The move is said to come amid concerns over disruptions to oil exports from Kazakhstan through the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. Our correspondent Farizna Karizmuna has more from Almaty.
Ukraine has suspended drone attacks on oil tankers using the Russian Black Sea port of Novorossiysk following a request from U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, according to the Financial Times. The request was reportedly made last month after Washington raised concerns that the attacks could destabilize global oil markets and harm American business interests. The tankers in question carry crude oil from Kazakhstan through the Caspian Pipeline Consortium to its export terminal near Novorossiysk. The Financial Times says Kyiv agreed not to target CPC infrastructure or vessels with no links to Russia, provided they are not under Ukrainian sanctions and are not carrying Russian oil or other Russian cargo. The issue became particularly acute in July. Reuters reports that drone attacks in the Black Sea reduced the CPC oil loadings by as much as 20%. Kazakhstan was forced to temporarily restrict shipments along the route while the country's oil production fell by 14% compared with June, according to sources. For Kazakhstan, the CPC is a crucial export route, but the disruption also affects major Western investors. U.S. energy giants Chevron and ExxonMobil are both involved in the CPC and have significant stakes in Kazakhstan's oil industry. Chevron holds a 50% stake in Tengizchevroil, the company that operates the Tengiz oil field, while ExxonMobil holds 25%. The growing risks have pushed Kazakhstan to look more actively at alternative export routes, including the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. Around 1.2 million tons of Kazakh oil currently move through that route each year, and Azerbaijan says it's ready to increase that volume to 2.2 million tons. Farisa Kalimurdina, Almaty, A News.
Germany is marking the 65th anniversary of the construction of the Berlin Wall on Wednesday with an installation and an open-air exhibition in front of the Brandenburg Gate. 65 years ago, the wall went up, dividing East and West Berlin and becoming one of the most powerful symbols of the Cold War. It stood for 28 years until it fell on the 9th of November in 1989. At least 136 people were killed trying to cross the wall, most of them shot by East German border guards. More than 75,000 people were imprisoned for attempting to leave East Germany, while around 5,000 managed to escape to the west. The wall was built to stop a mass exodus of East Germans westwards. Around 3 million people had already left East Germany between 1949 and 1961. Azerbaijan says Nakhchivan is set to become a key connectivity hub for the South Caucasus region, linking major transport and energy routes. During a visit to the Autonomous Republic, President Aliyev outlined plans to upgrade its railway network to connect it to Zangezur corridor and expand its role in transport links.
Nakhchivan is emerging as an important part of Azerbaijan's wider connectivity strategy. The region is set to become a key link between Azerbaijan's mainland territory, Turkey and Iran, while its planned connection to the Zangezur corridor could further integrate it into regional transport networks. President Ilham Aliyev says the Nakhchivan route will serve two major transport directions.
This will be a branch of the East-West transport corridor. At the same time, it will be a branch of the North-South transport corridor.
The East-West connection would link the South Caucasus with Turkey and further towards European markets, while the North-South route could provide an additional connection between Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran and markets further south. Azerbaijan plans to upgrade the Nakhchivan railway to significantly increase its capacity. The target is to eventually handle at least 15 million tons of cargo a year.
Our goal is to have at least 15 million tons of cargo transit through this transport corridor.
The railway is also expected to become part of the wider Zangezur corridor project. Under the TRIPP framework agreed in Washington, the proposed route through Armenia is intended to connect Azerbaijan's mainland with Nakhchivan and create a new transport link across the South Caucasus. But the vision goes beyond railways and highways.
This project is not merely a railway or a highway. Fiber optic cables, power lines, and in the future, if needed, oil and gas pipelines can also pass through here.
That would make the corridor a multimodal connectivity route, potentially carrying cargo, electricity, digital infrastructure and energy resources. Nakhchivan is also being developed as part of Azerbaijan's renewable energy strategy. Solar and hydroelectric projects are planned with the potential to generate hundreds of megawatts of electricity and eventually support exports to Turkey, Iran and Europe. Aliyev says the broader objective is to turn Nakhchivan into a major regional hub.
Nakhchivan will turn into an indispensable transport hub. This is entirely possible.
For Azerbaijan, Nakhchivan's strategic importance goes beyond its immediate geography. Its position places it at the intersection of several emerging connectivity routes across the South Caucasus, linking transport, energy and digital networks.
Now, for more on this regional story, I'm joined by Gaya Mamadov, a member of parliament here in Azerbaijan. Hello, and thank you for taking the time to join us on A News.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So President Aliyev has set a very ambitious target of at least 15 million tons of freight through the Zangezur route. What needs to happen then for Nakhchivan to become a genuine logistic hub with the warehousing, customs and freight infrastructure that comes with that, rather than simply a place through which cargo passes?
Indeed. Well, first of all, let me emphasize that a president's visit, this visit to Nakhchivan has indeed additional regional connotations. As you know, Nakhchivan is on the eve of opening a transportation corridor with the mainland Azerbaijan. We have been waiting for this since the end of the Second Karabakh War, as Mr. President explained. And unfortunately, from 2020 until 2025, not much progress has been achieved, in spite of Armenia's obligation to do so. With the agreeing Trump road trip last year in Washington, D.C., practical things started to move. And again, we are on the eve of important practical breakthrough moments. Nakhchivan, due to its geographic location, has indeed great potential to be a hub for transportation and energy routes. Of course, Nakhchivan, its own potential, as Mr. President explained, for production of energy is immense. Right now, it is the energy exported in the Autonomous Republic is 300 megawatts, which can easily be scaled to 1 gigawatt. It is a huge amount for a small region like Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. Overall, this region's electricity energy resources is very much sought after, especially with the expansion of consumption in neighboring countries, and of course, on top of this, another priority Mr. President has always emphasizing is making Azerbaijan a hub for AI data centers. Nakhchivan, with its unique location, has potential also to be one of such hubs too. As for transportation corridor issue, which is the issue number one for us, Azerbaijan, as you know, given the historical past, Nakhchivan is cut from the mainland of Azerbaijan. It is a historical legacy that we inherit from Soviet time. Of course, Azerbaijan respects international law and international borders. At the same time, it's our expectation that Armenia will accelerate realization of the unimpeded and safe transportation, safe communication between the western regions of Azerbaijan and Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic.
Mr. Mammadov, the president has criticized Armenia over the delay in implementing Article 9 of the November 10, 2020 statement and Russia for failing to ensure its implementation, while pointing then to the subsequent U.S. role. How critical is it for Azerbaijan that the construction of the trip actually begins before the end of this year, and how significant is that timing politically and strategically?
Well, it is long overdue. I'd like to emphasize why it is important to have this transportation route to Nakhchivan, and why it's important not to allow any delays. During the conflict in 90s and 2000s, as you know, Nakhchivan was basically in a blockade situation, because all means of communication from Azerbaijan's mainland went through the territory of Armenia. And during the conflict, Armenia cut these connections, and people of Nakhchivan suffered a lot. Now, given this historical memory, would like to reopening of this communication road as soon as possible. And one important nuance, Mr. President also mentioned that Armenia obliged to reopen safe and unimpeded access to Nakhchivan as part of the deal agreement that put end to the conflict and put end to the war, where Armenia actually capitulated. Reopening the corridor was agreed as a condition for stopping Azerbaijan's military operations, where Armenia's military forces were trapped, over 20,000 of them, and we showed mercy to Armenia so that things can move on a more human way. And of course, it's our expectation that this route will be reopened without further delay. But there is also good development, at least since Washington summit last year. Armenia started to do certain practical issues, but I think it is not, whether it's enough or not, I'm not here to judge it, but still we would like to opening this corridor as soon as possible. And the technical aspects of the issues are not that complicated. I remember our president has once declared that if it was up to Azerbaijani companies, we could have built this 40-kilometer part of the route within a bit more than a year. But I don't know, certain things on Armenia's side takes time. At least we see some progress. Of course, we wish a speedy implementation of this project.
Mr. Mammadov, briefly, before I run out of time, the president also said an international consortium could potentially be considered for Nakhchivan section on the railway, but with Azerbaijan retaining its controlling stake, how should we understand that the proposal in the context of Baku's insistence on sovereign control over strategically important infrastructure?
Well, I mean, we should distinguish between the sovereign control and normal economic activity. Azerbaijan always welcomed foreign investment in various parts of its economy, be it energy or manufacturing or transportation. There is no problem with it. I mean, the control package leaving to Azerbaijan, government of Azerbaijan, that's also a commercial decision. Of course, maybe there are some other considerations, but overall, we of course uphold the principle of sovereignty. There is no question in it. But when it comes to the Armenia's section of the corridor, it is agreed that it's going to be unimpeded, and unimpeded means unimpeded, so it must be fulfilled as such.
Mr. Gaya Mammadov, thank you so much for taking the time to join us once again on A News.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, drone attacks in Libya have disrupted electricity supplies and put the country's oil operations under growing pressure. An attack on the southern region substation caused a complete outage, cutting power to areas south of the city. The attack followed explosive-laden drone strikes on fuel tanks at Libya's largest operating refinery. The National Oil Corporation says it could declare a force majeure if attacks continue. After the break, we'll look at more stories shaping the region. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. Turkmenistan is seeking to strengthen its role in transport routes connecting Central Asia and markets in Europe. Officials have highlighted cooperation with Georgia, including the development of the Trans-Caspian and Lapis Lazuli corridors. Our correspondent Civil Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
Turkmenistan is stepping up cooperation with Georgia to expand transport links between Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Europe. Speaking at the conference on Caspian Sea cooperation, Turkmen Foreign Minister Rashid Muratov highlighted the development of the Middle Corridor and the Trans-Caspian Road as key areas of bilateral cooperation. The move follows a series of recent initiatives. In February, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and Georgia agreed to strengthen coordination along the Middle Corridor, including cargo transportation and digitalization. In July, during President Sardar Muhammadov's visit to Georgia, Ashgabat also said it was negotiating the establishment of a Turkmen cargo terminal on Georgia's Black Sea coast. The road would allow goods traveling from Central Asia across Caspian Sea to reach Georgian ports and continue towards Turkey and European markets. Turkmenistan and Georgia are also working on the Lapis Lazuli corridor, linking Afghanistan with Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. The push comes as the Trans-Caspian Road gains importance as countries seek to diversify trade routes and reduce reliance on traditional northern corridors. The European Union says freight volumes along the road have quadrupled since 2022 and is supporting investment in ports, railway, roads, and logistics infrastructure. For Turkmenistan, stronger links with Georgia could therefore provide greater access to Black Sea ports and European markets, while strengthening its position as a transit hub between Central Asia and the West. Cyril Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Now, Pakistan is stepping up efforts to mediate between Iran and the United States over the ongoing conflict in the Gulf. Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi is in Tehran as Islamabad seeks to revive stalled diplomacy. Mariam Zia reports from Islamabad.
Pakistan is trying to revive its mediation between Iran and the United States. Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi arrived in Tehran on Tuesday. He met Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. In his meeting with the Iranian president, Naqvi described the relationship between the neighbors as strong, long-standing, and unbreakable. His visit comes as tensions around the Strait of Hormuz rise again. At the same time, Pakistan's defense minister says Washington and Tehran are close to some sort of an arrangement. But for Islamabad, reviving that dialogue will not be easy. Iran has linked any fully reopening of Hormuz to wider conditions involving the United States. Iran and Oman are also discussing arrangements for maritime traffic through the waterway. But Tehran says an understanding with Oman alone would not mean the strait is fully reopened. The waterway has become one of the most sensitive flashpoints in the regional crisis. For Pakistan, the stakes are high. Any prolonged disruption could raise energy and shipping costs. And for Pakistan, keeping Hormuz open is not only a diplomatic priority, it is an economic necessity. Marlene Zia, A News, Islamabad.
Afghanistan is approaching 5 years under Taliban rule, with UNESCO warning that millions of girls are being denied education. It says the ban on secondary and higher education could cause lasting damage to the country's economy and workforce. Tamim Bahiz reports.
Afghanistan remains the only country in the world where girls and women are formally barred from secondary and higher education, according to UNESCO. The Taliban returned to power in 2021, promising women and girls access to education, but later barred girls from secondary schools and women from universities. The Taliban described those measures as temporary, but they remain in place. The authorities say they respect women's rights in accordance with their interpretation of Islamic law and Afghan culture. UNESCO warns the impact could last for decades. It estimates the education restrictions could eventually push 600,000 Afghan women out of the workforce and result in cumulative income losses of around $9.6 billion. There are also growing concerns about Afghanistan's wider education system, with UNESCO saying more than 2 million primary school children are out of school and warning that the country could face a shortage of more than 11,000 female teachers by 2030, as restrictions prevent women from teaching and many educators have left the country. The UN agency says more than 90% of 10-year-olds cannot read a simple text, while many schools are overcrowded and poorly equipped. With millions of Afghans returning to the country and natural disasters forcing hundreds of schools to close, UNESCO says the pressure on an already fragile education system is continuing to grow. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A-News.
Today is the International Caspian Day, also known as the Day of Protection of Marine Environment, of the Caspian Sea. Exactly 20 years ago, following the signing of the Tehran Convention, the littoral states decided to join efforts to prevent pollution of the Caspian Sea's marine environment from all sources, as well as to protect, preserve and restore its ecological condition.
The Caspian Sea is the world's largest enclosed inland body of water, connecting 5 countries: Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Iran and Russia. Its importance extends far beyond the region, playing a key role in energy, trade routes, fisheries and transport between Europe and Asia. In 2018, the convention on its legal status was signed in Kazakhstan's Aktau, creating a special legal framework for cooperation among the littoral states on issues such as seabed division, resource use and navigation. But the future of the Caspian is under growing threat. Over the past 2 decades, parts of its shoreline have retreated by up to 35 kilometers due to falling water levels.
There's no water in the areas where we used to swim as children. For example, the water was all the way to where I sit on this shore, and it was deep.
Scientists say the decline is linked to reduced water flow from the Volga River, which supplies around 80% of the Caspian's water, as well as climate change, dams, industrial activity, and expanding irrigation. The environmental impact is already visible. The Caspian seal population has declined by 95%, with fewer than 70,000 remaining. Falling water levels are also affecting ports and coastal communities across the region, threatening a vital transport and energy routes. Despite international efforts, including the 2006 Tehran Convention, cooperation remains limited. International Caspian Day serves as a reminder that protecting this unique ecosystem requires joint action.
All right, that's the news for this hour. Thank you for joining me, Tim Tongana, and the team behind the scenes. Stay tuned to A-News for all the latest updates on your international and regional stories. Goodbye.